Hello everyone, this is one short video on properties of fluids. So if you look at properties of fluids, right, we have three segments in this. One is the fluid statics part. So in fluid statics we will be talking about the study of the fluid when it is at rest. The second segment will be the fluid dynamics part. Third segment will be the micro properties, where we will focus on the surface tension and applications of it. So the way we are doing it is we are kind of splitting this into two separate chapters. So here in this video we are going to cover the statics parts and dynamic part. Surface tension, we'll have a separate video on that. Okay. So first we'll begin with the idea of the fluid statics. Fluid static means what? The study of the fluid which is at rest. So what is a fluid basically? Like you take water. When a force is applied on the water, so whether it is a water or any liquid or even a gas, when you apply a force on them, they would basically flow. So when there is a force acting on them, they will be flowing because of the force. That's why we call them as fluids. So fluids will include both the liquids as well as the gases. Liquids means mostly the liquid that we will be referring to is water. So we'll try to study water in most of the cases whenever we are referring to a liquid. Okay, so both of them, the liquids and gases combinedly, we'll call them as fluids. Now during our discussion in these properties of fluids, we'll categorize fluids into two types. One is what we call as an ideal fluid and other is a real fluid. So this is, just like the way we classify the gases into real gas and ideal gas, right? But that classification is based upon a different set of properties. So here when we say an ideal fluid, the ideal fluid will not have any viscosity. So what is viscosity? We will see. It will of course have no surface tension, and also it will be incompressible. Incompressible means what? Density will be constant. If you represent the density of the fluid with a symbol rho, density will be what? Constant. That is what is incompressible. Whereas when you go to the real ones, right, the viscosity will be there for the real fluids. There is going to be surface tension and they will be also compressible. Means the density of these real fluids can be changing. Okay. So if you start the study of the fluid which is at rest, so here most of the derivations, right, we will do the derivations by using or by assuming that we are dealing with a liquid. But similar results can be used in the case of the gases also. Okay. So let us say we have a fluid and we are keeping an object. So this is an object which is kept inside the fluid. There will be a pressure that will be exerted on that object. So what do you mean by pressure, or rather how do you quantify the pressure? Like you see the object, if you take it like a cuboid, right, it has got different faces. A cuboid will have 6 faces, just like a cube. On each face, normal to the face, there will be force acting. If it is a water, that is the liquid outside, we will call it as the hydrostatic pressure. Okay, but yeah, there will be a force acting normal to the surface of the object. So if you take one such surface of the object, let us say the force, the total normal force. What is this? The total normal force acting on that surface area delta A. Then the total normal force, if you add it up, right, that is what we will be referring to as the thrust. So thrust, which is nothing but we simply have to add up all the normal force acting on the surface. So the difference is when we say adding all the normal force, think about it. So if you have a surface like this, right, each and every place the force will be acting normal. Generally when we say add forces means we will think about adding them with direction. It is not the way we will do it here. Okay, so because all the force here will be what? Normal. We will simply have to add up all these values, that's it, and then divided by the corresponding area. That is what is going to give us the pressure acting on that surface. Now the thing is, if you want to measure pressure at a point inside the liquid, right, what should happen? We should use this mathematical technique, right? What is it? The delta A value, the area we consider, we will make it to be very, very small. If you take the area to be very small, means what? The surface will become like a point. So for that, what we will do, we will use the limit approach. In mathematics, basic math also, we will see that, right? So limit delta A tending to 0, delta F by delta A will be what? That will be giving us pressure at a point. So pressure, generally what will be the unit of pressure? So force is Newton and area is meter square, right? So that is what we will be also referring to as what? Pascal, that is the SI unit. Other than that, we also have some common units of pressure, like ATM is there. Okay, so ATM we have, then we have bar, then we have torr. All these things we have seen in the units and dimension chapter also. Now the thing is, if you measure pressure at a point inside the liquid, right, whichever direction you consider the measurement of pressure, like we take an area which is in this orientation, you divide the thrust on that surface area by the area, you will get a pressure value, right? You take this side area, you are going to get the same value of pressure. You take the other side area, you will get the same value, which means pressure at a point inside the liquid column, right, that will be same in all directions. So that is the reason why the pressure, right, will be actually a scalar quantity. Pressure will not have direction, but we have seen some physical quantities, right, they will not have direction, like moment of inertia, but that value of that quantity will depend upon which direction we are making the measurement. But it is not the case here, so pressure in any direction you measure, it will be what? Same. So that is the reason why pressure will be a proper scalar quantity. So this is about the understanding of the pressure in a fluid, but the discussion we are doing by looking at a liquid. Now if you have a liquid column, let's say there is an liquid column, means what? If you keep liquid in a vessel, right, if you take the liquid in a vessel, then the liquid column means what? If you think of it like one hypothetical cylinder of that liquid, we want to see what is the pressure due to that liquid column. So pressure on the bottom area. So pressure on the bottom area. So here when we say pressure due to the liquid column, means what? It is nothing but the weight of that liquid column, right? So what will be the weight of the liquid column? If you take it like a cylinder, right, weight will be what? Rho, density of the liquid, into volume, A into H. A is the area of cross section and H is the height, into G, that is the weight. This is acting on how much area? Area A. So if you divide that, we will get what? Rho into G into H, or we can also write it like what? H into rho into G, because in some textbooks they will use this rho GH notation, in some textbooks they will write it like what? H into rho into G. So if you have a liquid column of height H, then because of that liquid column, right, what is the pressure acting on the bottom surface? It will be what? Rho into G into H. Okay, now if you want to look at what is the average pressure, what is the average pressure acting on a container of liquid? So just say, we have a container here, we will take a container like cylindrical shape only. If you have the pressure, right, how the pressure is going to vary? Look at it at the bottom surface, right? So if the height is H, the bottom surface, what will be the pressure value? Rho into G into H. Top surface, because above that nothing is there, means what? Here the pressure will be what? 0. So if you see, the pressure is varying is what? This is the pressure at the top, we call it as 1. Pressure at the bottom is what? Rho GH. So pressure will be what? Uniformly changing from 0 to the final value of rho GH. So if you ask what is the average pressure acting on the container wall, so if you have a liquid of height H inside the the vessel, what is the average pressure acting on the container wall? It will be what? Average, basically. So it will be average of the pressure at the top, which is 0, and the bottom pressure is what? Rho GH. So what is it? Half into rho into G into H. So this is the result we can remember. So this is the pressure due to liquid column. Now similar to that, if you consider the earth, right, Above the earth also there is layers of these air molecules. So you can think of it like the air column. How we can think of it? We can think of it like what? We can think of it like an air column is there. Okay. Now by the same formula, right? What is it if you take, this is the surface of the earth. This is the surface. Above that there is a air column. Typically this air column might be extending up to 8 kilometers or somewhere around that distance. The density, if you assume to be constant, then what will be the pressure acting at the bottom surface because of the weight of that air column? It will be what? Same formula, right? It will be what? Rho into G into H. Here rho is what? Density of the air, and G is the acceleration due to gravity, and H is the height of that air column. So the pressure that is exerted by the atmosphere means the air molecules on the earth is generally what we will be calling as the atmospheric pressure. So here one thing is important for observation, like if we measure the atmospheric pressure at the sea level, right, it will be high. As we go to altitudes, the atmospheric pressure value will decrease. Why? Because if you think of this air column cylinder, right, we are at the sea level means we'll have the air column height will be largest. If you keep going to altitudes, let's say for example we'll come to a point here, then above this, right, you see what is the air column that is, it will be lesser air column, right? So the weight of those air molecules is going to reduce. So the pressure exerted by the atmosphere will be higher at the sea level. So if you look at what is the atmosphere pressure at the sea level, right, that will be equal to the pressure created by the 76 centimeter of mercury column. So what will be the pressure created by the 76 centimeter of mercury column means H rho G formula, right? Okay, so here we can also say H into D into G. Either we will say density is rho or D. Okay, so H is what? 76 centimeter. The density of mercury is the 13.6 in terms of gram per cc, and G is what? 980 dyne per centimeter square. This is going to give us the value in terms of the CGS unit. What about the SI unit? 76 centimeter means 0.76 meters. What is the density of mercury? 13,600, which is what? 13.6 in 10 power 3 kg per meter cube. What is the acceleration due to gravity value? 9.8. Substitute all the values means we will get the atmosphere pressure at the sea level to be actually it will be 1.01325 into 10 power 5 pascals. So that is what we will be referring as 1 atm. So what is the conversion here? 1 atm will be equal to what? 1.01325 into 10 power 5 pascals. So this is what is the atmosphere pressure. Now we will see some standard results or important results with regard to the pressure in a fluid. So we talked about pressure due to a liquid column and also the atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure means what? It is the pressure due to air column. If you look at the pressure at a depth in a liquid, means what? Here we are putting the word open, means think about it. So we have a vessel in which the liquid is there. Let's say the depth is H. What is the depth of the column? It is what? H. Now open means what? So if you consider same way, if you consider one hypothetical cylinder, at the top surface, right, that is open to atmosphere. Open means it is open to what? It is open to atmosphere. Open to atmosphere means there will be the pressure of the atmosphere acting. Let's say this surface area is A, we take. Then at the bottom, right, the pressure is the pressure at the depth. Okay, so this is P. That is what we are trying to find. So if you look at the weight of the liquid cylinder we have considered, right? So what will be the weight of that? Weight will be equal to what? M into G only, right? So M is what? Rho into A into H into G. That is the weight. So we will see here the force due to the atmosphere pressure is downwards. Weight of that hypothetical cylinder is also downwards. Force due to the pressure P at the bottom point is upwards. because it is statics, right? It is at the liquid is not moving at all, which means what? There should be a force balance. Total downward force is what? Atmosphere pressure into the area of cross section A, plus what is the other downward force? Weight, rho into A into H into G. That will be balanced by what? The upward force. Upward force is what? Pressure at the bottom, P, into here also what is the area A. So you can see it in both sides, A will get cancelled. So what is the relation? Atmosphere pressure plus rho into G into H. That is the pressure at a depth in a liquid which is open to atmosphere. If it is not open to atmosphere, means sealed. Imagine it is sealed. If there is a liquid vessel which is sealed, means there is a vacuum. Then in that case, the pressure at a depth, right, if you look at the formula, the atmosphere pressure will not come, because above the top surface, if you take the top surface of the cylinder, hypothetical cylinder we take, right, above the top surface there is no atmosphere, right? That's why the PA value will not be coming if it is a closed vessel. Okay, so this is the difference between a closed vessel and an open vessel, pressure at a depth. Okay, so if it is a closed vessel, means what will be the pressure at depth? It will be what? Simply rho GH. Atmosphere pressure will not be coming over there. Now it's the formula, final formula is what? Now open vessel, what is the pressure at a depth? It will be what? Atmosphere pressure, PA, plus either we will say rho GH or we can say H into rho into G. Now as we said, sometimes the liquid is open to the atmosphere. The vessel in which we are keeping the liquid is open to atmosphere. But while we are doing the comparisons in terms of the pressure at different points, right? So let's say we want to compare the pressure at point 1, point 2. Instead of comparing the absolute pressure, we would rather use this concept of gauge pressure. So what is gauge pressure? It's something but at any point you have the absolute pressure, or we can also call it as total pressure. From that you have to subtract the atmospheric pressure. So gauge pressure is what? Gauge pressure at a point is what? It is the difference between, so what is the gauge pressure? The total pressure. From that we have to subtract the atmospheric pressure. So this is about the concept of the gauge pressure. Now if you have a liquid which is static, the pressure at different points on the same horizontal level will be same or equal, which means what? You see here we are marking a point B, this side we are marking a point A. This is a liquid which is static, that is important. The liquid is not moving. If you have that case, then pressure at points that are the same horizontal level should be same. How it happens? We can do this by a quick derivation. So what is it? Previously we were considering a vertical hypothetical liquid cylinder, right? Now we will consider a horizontal one, cylinder. Okay, here the area we put delta A, equal, right? Delta A. Now this side the force acting, what is the force acting here? Let's call it as F1. What is it? P1 into delta A. This side what is the force acting on that hypothetical cylinder? It will be what? It will be, let's call it as F2. What is it? P2 into delta A. Now this is a liquid which is static, not moving, right? Which means what? The horizontal direction, there are two forces acting. One is acting towards the right, other is acting towards the left. They should balance it, right? When they balance means what? P1 into delta A is equal to what? P2 into delta A. So delta A gets cancelled, means what? P1 is equal to P2. Not only these 2 points, if a liquid is static, we'll see that this is going to be the important point of consideration for a lot of the standard derivations and the standard type of problems that we will solve in the fluid statics. Okay, so if we consider points at the same horizontal level in a liquid which is static, all those points are going to have the same pressure. Like you see here, we have 3 different shapes of the vessel or the opening. Okay, so you see here the height is HA, here the height of the column is HB, here the height of the column is HC. You can see all the heights are same. Now previously, right, so all of them are open to atmosphere. pressure at a depth. When the vessel is open to atmosphere, right? What is the formula here? Look at what will be the formula. It will be what? Atmospheric pressure plus rho into G into HA. Here what is the pressure at the point B? Atmospheric pressure plus rho into G into HB. What is the pressure at point C? Atmospheric pressure plus rho into G into HC. All these heights are same, right? HA is equal to HB is equal to HC, which means A, B, C are going to have the same pressure. So irrespective of the shape of the column, pressure value will not depend upon the shape of the column. It only depends upon what the height of the liquid column. So pressure exerted by a liquid only depends upon the height of the column and will be independent of the shape of the column. Like, here we will see one is like cylindrical, other is like conical, other is, rounded shape. But it does not depend upon the shape. It only depends upon what is the height of the column. Now, one more scenario where some of us will have doubt is like if we have a liquid, in that we are keeping a solid object. Like what we are thinking is the solid object is floating, like that we are considering. There is a solid object of mass m. Like if we think about point 1, that is coming exactly below that. Solid object is floating on a place, right? Below that we will mark a point 1. Slightly away we will mark a point 2. But the point 1 and point 2 are at same horizontal level. The point 1, point 2, they are at the same horizontal level. Now the doubt that we will have is, okay, above point 1 there is a, there is a liquid, but after liquid what is coming? There is a object which is floating. Above point 2, if you see there is only fully liquid, we will have a doubt. Will the pressure at point 1 and point 2 be same or not? Because this is a liquid which is at rest and point 1, point 2 are at the same horizontal level. Again go back and then think about the horizontal cylinder. If you apply the same concept, right, the cylinder should be static, which means what? Force balance. So from there what we are going to get? P2 value will be equal to P1. Okay, so as long as the liquid is static, irrespective of what is the configuration, pressure at points which are at the same horizontal level will be same. Okay. Now how do we measure the pressure? We will measure, like say for example, we want to measure the pressure because of the atmosphere. That is done by using a barometer. Typically we will use mercury as the fluid or liquid inside the barometer. So barometer is a device that is used to measure the atmospheric pressure. So what is the setup? We will have a mercury that is taken in a vessel. Okay, so the mercury is taken in a vessel and one inverted tube, or you can say column, will be put into the mercury. So what we will observe is the mercury will be raising into the tube. You will say the mercury will be raising into the tube. Okay. Now what we will do is we will take point C and point B which are at the same horizontal level. What is it? B and C are at the same level. So as I said before, right, we are going to use that point in a lot of derivations and standard concepts we are going to see in the statics part. B and C are at the same horizontal level means what? Pressure at B should be equal to pressure at C. But what is pressure at C means, because C is a point which is just open to atmosphere. This is what atmospheric pressure. What about the pressure at B means? B, there is a mercury column of height H. Above the mercury column there is a vacuum, which means the pressure will be what? Pressure due to a liquid of column H. What is it? Rho into G into H. In this case rho will be what? Density of the mercury, which is what? 13,600 kg per meter cube. So the atmospheric pressure will be equal to what? Rho into G into H. That's it. So if you put a scale here, right, with markings in that column, you would be getting the height of the column to be what? 76 centimeters. Put the value of H as 76. That's what we did before, right? The atmospheric pressure is equal to what? The pressure created by a mercury column of height 76 centimeters. From there we will get the atmospheric pressure value. Now the reason why mercury is used in this barometer is because mercury has got a higher density. Since the density is higher, right, the liquid need not rise to larger height. Otherwise, if the density of the liquid used is less, then we will be, to balance the atmospheric pressure, we have to have a raise of the liquid to a larger value. There the aberrations will start coming. Now the other pressure measuring device is the open tube manometer. So there are two types of manometer. One is open tube manometer, other is the closed one. Open tube manometer means what you see here, this side is open to atmosphere, that is what open tube. Manometer will have a gas bulb. What is this? This is a gas bulb. So manometer is used for the measurement of the gas pressures. So manometer is used to measure the gas pressure. Okay, so we have a gas here. Now the gas will exert a pressure. The point here that you are marking here will have a pressure which is the pressure of the gas. This side point B, which is at the same horizontal level, you see, is having a mercury. Here also we can take the liquid to be what? Mercury. Is having a mercury of height h, then it is open to atmosphere. So pressure at point A is equal to pressure at point B because they are the same horizontal level. What is the pressure at point B? Atmospheric pressure plus rho gh. What is the pressure at point A? That is the side which is open to the gas bulb, right? So that is the gas pressure. So straight away we are able to get. So what is the gas pressure? It is what? Atmospheric pressure plus rho into G into H. So this is the open tube manometer that is used for the measurement of the gas pressures. If it is a closed one, means what? This side will be closed. So here there will be no atmospheric pressure part will not come. That is the only difference. Next we also have one more device called as sphygmomanometer. We will not go into the details of how it is working and all that, but this is used for what? I'm sure if you just happen to walk into any hospital or clinic, you will see this device, right? So that is used for measuring of the blood pressures. Okay. So when you look at a static liquid, one of the important laws that describes the behavior of a static liquid is the Pascal's law. So what is Pascal's law? It deals with the static incompressible and enclosed liquid. So change in the pressure applied to enclosed incompressible liquid will be transmitted undiminished to every point of the liquid and also to the walls of the container. So what do you mean by that? Let's say for example we have a liquid vessel. In that there is a liquid. Now this is an enclosed and the liquid must be what? Incompressible. Enclosed vessel, liquid is incompressible, liquid is static. If I change pressure, let's say for example I increase the pressure by 1 atm. I'm increasing the pressure by how much? 1 atm. Then what will happen is at each and every other point inside the liquid, let us mark point 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3 like that. Different points we can mark. Each and every point, right? The pressure will be increasing by how much? 1 atm. So the pressure change will be transmitted undiminished without diminishing. Each and every point also the pressure, it is not like the pressure is going to increase. The pressure is going to increase by the same value. And also the walls of the container, there also the pressure increase will be same. One of the applications of this is the hydraulic lift. So hydraulic lift, hydraulic brakes, all these they work on the principle of the Pascal's law. But hydraulic lift is the device that is used to lift heavy weights. Let's say for example we have a car of weight W. It's not very easy to lift it. But what we have is we have a liquid container which is having two sides. One side we have a smaller area, that is what we also call as the input side. Other side we have a larger area, that is the output side. Now input side we apply a force small f. So as a result, what is the pressure change we are creating here? Pressure change is what? F by A. This is the pressure change created. As per the Pascal's law, if you consider the liquid to be what? Incompressible, then the pressure change will be transmitted uniformly undiminished. Which means what? If you look at the other side, the pressure change that is witnessed on the other side also must be same, right? Which means if the output force we are realizing is F, that force will be acting on an area A. What is the pressure change realized on the output side? It will be what? The force that we experience there divided by the area there. But as per the Pascal's law, the pressure change that we create should be same as the pressure change that is experienced, right? Which means what? Small f by small a is equal to what? Capital F by capital A. Rearrange means small f into capital A by small a is equal to capital F. Now the beauty of this is, if I apply small f is the input force, right? I apply 1 Newton. If the capital A by small a value, capital A is what? The larger area side, divided by small a is the smaller area. If say for example capital A by small a is 1000, that ratio, then what will be the output force I am going to get? I will get an output force of 1000 newtons. So by giving a small input force, we will be able to release large output force. That's how we can lift these heavy weights. And questions on this, right? Pascal's law questions, they will be simply based upon this formula. Next we have one more law that is important in the study of the fluid statics, that is the Archimedes principle. So Archimedes principle is basically a principle which explains the concept of buoyancy force. I mean, there are theories and probably stories that talk about how Archimedes got the idea. So they say, he was jumping into water tub to take a bath, and as soon as he jumped into the water tub, he realized that water is coming out of the tub. So basically, he is displacing a liquid from the tub, and as a result, if he is inside the tub, he will experience an upward thrust. That is what is the buoyancy force. So if a body either partially or totally immersed in a fluid, then it will experience upward force, which we also call as what? Upward thrust, which will be equal to the weight of the liquid displaced, or generally we will say fluid, because this can be used both for the liquids as well as for the gases. Buoyancy will be there both for the liquid as well as the gases also. So the buoyancy force will be equal to what? The weight of the liquid displaced or the fluid displaced. Now for that we will just take these two examples, right? So here we have a object of volume V. Now in this case it is what? This is the case of the partial immersion. This is the case of the complete immersion. In partial immersion case, let us say V dash is the volume that is immersed. Whatever the volume that is immersed, right, that much amount of the liquid is displaced. Means previously here what will be there? In that particular volume, what will be there? The liquid is there, right? Now that liquid is not there, means that is displaced. Previously, if you look at it, right, the liquid that is there will have its weight, which will be downwards. But since it is at rest, means the interaction with the surrounding liquid particles, right, should create a force which will be upwards, exactly equal to the weight of that liquid displaced. Now even if you remove the liquid and now the solid has come in its place, right, the interaction force because of the surrounding molecules will still exist, and that value will be equal to what? The weight of the liquid that is displaced. The value will be equal to what? The weight of the liquid displaced. So here if you see, let's say rho is the density of the liquid. The buoyancy force in this case is what? In this case, what will be the buoyancy force? It will be what? Weight of the liquid displaced means density of the liquid rho. What is the volume here? V dash into G. Over here what you see here is that the total object is fully submerged, which means what? Here the buoyancy force will be equal to what? Density of the liquid into total volume V of that object, right? That much amount of liquid is displaced into G. So this is, partial immersion. We have to see what is the volume that is immersed. So V dash is what? Here V dash is what? The volume that is immersed. So this will be also equal to what? The volume of the liquid that is displaced. Is also equal to the volume of the liquid that is displaced. Okay, so you understand how the buoyancy is coming. Buoyancy is coming because of the interaction due to the surrounding liquid molecules, and they will interact in such a way that exactly they will apply an upward force which is equal to the weight of whatever the liquid that is displaced. Now in this case, if we have an object, like look at this, so we have an object here which is partially in one, this is like liquid 1, this is like the liquid, two liquids are there. So you see here V1 is in the liquid 1. So the buoyancy FB1 will be what? Liquid 1 density rho 1, volume that is in that V1 into G. Buoyancy will be upwards. What about the buoyancy because of the second liquid? It will be what? Rho 2 into V2 into G, that will be also upwards. Since both the buoyancy are upward, right? What will be the total buoyancy? Means we simply have to add them. So what is it? V1 into rho 1 into G plus V2 into rho 2 into G. That's how we will calculate the total buoyancy force acting on this object. Now when you look at any object, right? So previously we talked about two conditions. One, partially submerged, and other is completely submerged. The partial submerging, right, that is what we also refer to as what? Floating. So what is that? We'll generally refer as floating. Okay, so we'll see what is the condition for the floating. So here we will go with the usual notation. So V is what? The volume of the object, and we assume that it is partially submerged. V dash is what? The volume that is submerged, and rho will take the density of the liquid. Since we use rho for the density of liquid, we will use sigma as density of the solid. Now this object, solid object, right, is partially submerged here. So what will be the weight of that? The mass of that, mass means what? Sigma, that's the density of the solid, into its volume V into G, that is the weight. That should be balanced by the upward thrust or buoyancy, then only it will be able to float. What is the buoyancy value? Rho, because what is buoyancy? Weight of the liquid displaced. So rho into V dash into G. They must balance. It means what? Sigma into V into G is equal to what? Rho into V dash into G. G gets cancelled. So from here, what we will be having is, look at this now. Sigma into V should be equal to what? Rho into V dash. Now, partial submerging means what? V dash will be less than V. That's it, right? Because V dash is what? The volume that is submerged, that will be less than V. Then only we will say it is floating, right? So if V dash is lesser means, because you look at the relation, it is like what? A into B is equal to C into D type. If V dash is less than V means rho should be more than sigma. So the condition for floating, this is what also what we call as general condition of floating. What is it? The rho should be more than sigma. Rho is what? Density of the liquid. Like, you see some, wooden objects floating in water. Why? Because the density of the wooden object will be lesser than the density of the water. That is why the wooden object is able to float. Okay, so that is the condition for the floating. The density of the liquid should be more than the density of the object. Now when you have an object which is either partially or completely submerged, right? When we try to measure the weight of the object, that's what we will be calling as the apparent weight. Like say for example, we have the object in a vessel. So it can be partially submerged or completely submerged. As a result of it, there will be a buoyancy acting in the upward direction. It will have its normal weight downward. Buoyancy will be upwards. What is the net downward force means? We have to do downward force, which is the actual weight, minus upward force. We have to subtract buoyancy. That is going to give us the apparent weight. So what is the apparent weight of an object which is immersed in liquid? Either it is a partial immersion or a complete immersion. What is it? Weight of the object minus buoyancy force. So here what we will do is we will just look at the formula for the complete immersion. So if you have a body which is completely inside the liquid, complete immersion, right? We will follow the same notation. What is it? V is the volume of the object. So we'll take the V as what? Volume of the object. Rho as the density of the liquid, and sigma as the density of the solid. What is the buoyancy force here? Complete means what? The total volume of the object will be the volume of the liquid displaced. So what is the buoyancy? V into rho into G, weight of the liquid displaced. What is the weight? V into sigma into G, because sigma is the density of the, sigma is what? It is the density of the material of the solid. Now look at it, is what? V into sigma into G minus V into rho into G. So here what we can do is, if you take V into sigma into G common, then what we will be having is 1 minus rho by sigma. So how it will come is, if you multiply it, right, then what you will have? V into sigma into G minus V into sigma into G into rho by sigma. That is nothing but our V sigma G minus V rho G. So what is the final result we have? This is a simplified formula to remember. What is it? V into sigma into G into 1 minus rho by sigma. Okay, so what is this here? Rho is the density of the liquid and sigma is the density of the solid material. So here if you look at it, right, what is this V into sigma into G? That is the actual weight. So what is it that we can say? The apparent weight is equal to what? The actual weight into 1 minus rho by sigma. In this, rho is what? Rho is the density of the liquid. Sigma is the density of the solid material. So this is the concept of the apparent weight. Now while we have discussed about the fluid statics, right, we also have some results on the fluid, not the fluid moving, but the fluid container having a motion. Like say for example, you have a fluid in a container or a vessel that is going up with an acceleration a naught. The vessel itself is going up with an acceleration a naught. Then we will see how the pressure difference will be calculated. Like the same way we mark a point A and point B. We take the same hypothetical cylinder, right? Area of cross section A. What is the pressure here? PB. What is the pressure at the point A? PA. Now the thing is, if you draw the free body diagram of the hypothetical cylinder, right, there will be a force of PB into A acting down. There will be a force of PA into A acting up. And of course there will be the weight of that cylinder. What will be the weight of the cylinder? A is the area of cross section into H is the height of the cylinder into rho into G. Rho is the density of the liquid. As a result of all these forces, because the liquid container is going up with acceleration a naught, this cylinder also is going up with an acceleration a naught. Means what? Means what we are going to get, see, the net force upwards should give us this acceleration, correct? So what is the formula we can use here? Net force upwards means what? Upward force minus the downward force should be equal to mass of that cylinder. What is the mass of the cylinder? It will be what? A into H into rho into A naught. Now if you rearrange them, right, what we'll have, but A we can cancel off before even rearranging. What we'll get? PA is equal to PB plus, what is the other things that is left over there? It will be what? Rho. This is already there is a rho into h into a naught, and there is a rho into h into g. So if you take the rho common, what you will have? G plus a naught into h. So what is the formula we are getting? Pressure at point A is equal to what? What is the result? We have pressure at point A is equal to pressure at point B plus rho into G plus a naught into h. If you want to give the pressure difference, means what is the pressure difference? PA minus PB is equal to what? Rho into G plus a naught into h. Previously, what is it? If the liquid is static just like that, what is it? The pressure difference between 2 points which are at a vertical separation of h. What is the pressure difference between them? Rho GH. Now in this case, what is it? Rho into G plus a naught into h. This is when the container is going up with an acceleration a naught. Instead, if the container is coming down with acceleration a naught, then in place of plus we are going to get minus, that's it. So this is the pressure difference in a liquid which is accelerating in the vertical direction. Instead, if it is accelerating in the horizontal, you will see inclination for the top surface of the liquid. If theta is the angle made by the top surface of the liquid with the horizontal, right? Here also we will find the value of theta by using the free body diagram for the liquid. So here we are not looking at the derivation part, but the value of theta, if you draw the free body diagram for the liquid and calculate, we will get it as what? Tan theta will be equal to A by G. Means if A value is higher, if A is higher, right, tan theta value increases, means theta also will be what? Increasing. We will see more and more inclination happening for the top surface of the liquid. Similarly, if you take a liquid and then rotate it, this is something that we will normally also see, like the vessel itself is rotating. Let's say it is rotating with an angular velocity omega. The radius of the vessel container is r. Then you will see that there will be a meniscus that is formed. At the top surface there will be meniscus. Okay, so the gap here, let's say, is h. The height of the meniscus or gap, whatever we call it, the height of the meniscus will be given by what? Omega square into r square by 2g. So here the thing is, as omega is increasing, right, h value also will increase. And so if you rotate it faster, means you will see that the meniscus will be what? Having a greater height. So this also we will get this value by using the free body diagram approach. Okay, so here this is still what we consider as the fluid statics, because it's not like the fluid is moving, it is like the container in which the fluid is there, that container is having the motion. So these are the three results with regard to the liquid container subject to motion. So this is about the fluid statics part. Now the fluid dynamics part. Fluid dynamics will come when the fluid is actually in motion. So what is it that we are going to study in a fluid dynamics part? Okay, so in fluid dynamics part, right, first we should understand what are the different ways in which we can look at the flow of a fluid. So when you look at the flow of fluid, right, generally the particles of the fluid are going in different random directions. Like, you open the tap fully, what you'll observe is, the water that is coming out of the tap will just have what we'll also colloquially, what is the word that we use, we'll say turbulent. So turbulent flow means what? The liquid particles will have a random motion. Instead, if you generally have just to open the tap, like, it's very small, the speed of the flow will be what? Less. In that case, we will be referring to that kind of a flow as the streamline flow. What is a streamline flow is in the liquid motion, right? If, say, for example, you mark a point A, it will take a path. It will take a path. Let us mark the path like a line. That is what we are going to be calling as the streamline. If, say, a particle 1 is going in the path, at the next instant another particle 2 is coming to the same location. Whatever the path taken by the first particle, right, second particle also is going to go in the same path. That is the reason why we are using the word streamline. When we go to the electrostatics and magnetism, right, there we will see, here we'll talk about streamlines, there we'll talk about the field lines. At any point on the streamline, right, if you draw a tangent, to the streamline, that is going to give us the direction of velocity of the particle at that instant. Now when the streamline flow is happening on a surface, right, you can see that there are these layers. So one layer as a whole will be moving. So next to that there is another layer. Next to there is another layer. There will be no movement of particles across the layers. So that is the reason why we also call it as a laminar flow. So when the streamline flow is happening on a surface, right, you can think about the layers. So one layer, another layer, like that, layered movement. So the particles will not be exchanged between different layers. So hence this can be also called as what? Laminar flow. So when you see these two words, right, streamline and laminar, not to get confused, they both are referring to the type of motion. Streamline is generally referring to what? The concept of streamlines. But if the same flow is happening on a surface, right, we can think of the sheet like, it will not be like a flat sheet, but layers of the liquid moving. That's why we call it as what? Laminar flow. So generally what is the idea? Low speed will have a streamline flow, and if it is very high speed, we will have a turbulent flow. After some time we will even see what is the condition for the streamline flow and what is the condition for the turbulent flow. Now before we go into the discussion about the fluid dynamics, right, we will again reiterate on what is our ideal fluid. Ideal fluid means what? It is incompressible. Incompressible means what? Density of the fluid does not change. Why? Because in liquid, right, or fluid, pressure can change. At different points the pressure can change. Normally what we think, okay, gas means the pressure changing means what? Density will change. That's something we will see in the kinetic gas theory equation, the ideal gas equation, right? But here when we use the word ideal fluid, our assumption is what? Even though the pressure is changing at different points, the density of the fluid should not change. That should be constant. That is one important assumption for the ideal fluid. And the second is what? Non-viscous. We'll see what is going to happen because of the viscosity or viscous nature is there will be energy dissipation. So like we talked about the laminar flow, right? If you think about the bottom surface, usually the layer of particles which is just in contact with the bottom surface, this would be at rest, that will be held. This will try to, all these are trying to move. This layer will try to hold the layer above it little bit. So this will move little bit slow. As you keep going away from the contact surface, what you see is the liquid layers will move faster. That's why if you step into if there is a river flow that is happening or some water flow, you put your legs into it, right? What you'll observe is at the bottom the impact will not be much. At the top of your leg or knee level, at the top surface, right, you will see the impact will be more. Why? Because the bottommost areas are almost in contact with the river bed or whatever, the earth. That is almost like static, that is not moving. As you keep coming away from that contact surface, right, the velocity will be what? Increasing for the layers. How it is happening? Because the contact layer will try to prevent it from moving. This will try to prevent the other layer from moving. This will try to, so this friction like force, normally what is it that we will see in friction? Like if you have a surface, we keep an object, we are trying to move the object. So friction, it will what? It will oppose the relative motion. Friction opposes the relative motion between the surfaces in contact. Similarly here also it will be what? The friction like force that will oppose the relative motion between the layers. Now the ideal fluid will not have any of these viscous forces. So we'll talk about the viscous force in a little while, but this is what we consider as the ideal fluid, because some of the theorems or the results that we'll discuss first will be for the ideal fluid. Then we will go and talk about what can be the changes that will happen when we have the non-ideal or the real fluids, where we'll have to consider the viscous forces. So first one, we are dealing with what? We are dealing with the ideal fluid. So if you take a pipe which has got different cross section area, a pipe has got different cross section area. Now here the area of cross section is A1, here it is A2. Here the speed is what V1, here the speed is V2. Now when we look at the area multiplied by the velocity of the liquid, area multiplied by velocity of the liquid will be what? Just look at the unit, it will be what? Meter square into velocity is over meter per second. What is it going to give us? Meter cube per second. That is what? The volume flow rate. What is this? Volume flow rate. If you consider a time delta t, then here A1 V1 into delta t, right? This is going to give us what is the total volume of the liquid that is coming in. If you multiply this with the density there, that is going to give us what is the total mass that is coming in. If we are considering a steady state flow, means no mass accumulation, whatever the mass coming in the time delta t, same amount of mass should leave. What is the mass that is leaving here? Look at it. A2 into V2 into delta t into rho 2. That is the total mass that is leaving in the time delta t. Which means what? A1 V1 rho 1 delta t should be equal to what? A2 V2 rho 2 into delta t. So delta t is cancelled. So what we will be having? Rho 1 into A1 V1 should be equal to what? Rho 2 into A2 V2. But we said no, we are going to look at the ideal fluid, which means what? Density will not change. Density not changing means rho 1 is equal to rho 2. If the density is also changing means we can use the relation. This equation is going to be called as what? Equation of continuity. This is nothing but the conservation of mass. Whatever the mass coming in from one area of cross section, the same amount of mass must leave from the other area of cross section in a steady state flow. So look at it, if you cancel the rho means what we'll get? A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. So this is what we will be referring as the equation of continuity in a ideal fluid or ideal liquid. If the density is changing means we will have to use the other one. What is it? Rho 1 A1 V1 is equal to rho 2 A2 V2. So this is what is the equation of continuity, which is the conservation of mass principle applied. In this, right, A1 V1 as well as A2 V2, as we discussed before, what is it? This is the volume flow rate. Means whatever the volume coming in, same amount of volume should be leaving. Now we can see the applications of this will be, if you have I'm sure a lot of us will do it, if you are going with a normal hose pipe or the water pipe, right, you try to the water the plants in your garden. If the plants are far away, one common thing that we will do is we will try to close some part of the area of cross section of the pipe. A part of it we will close with our finger, right? That is something that we will commonly do. What happens as a result of it? You tell me. If you close a part of the area, you close a part of this, so this is the area of cross section of the pipe, you close a part. What we will generally observe? We will see that the liquid will be able to now move faster. The speed of the liquid will increase and the liquid will be able to go to farther distance. So if you look at the equation of continuity, right, see, if say for example we have A1 value is lesser, then at that particular area of cross section the corresponding V1 will be what? Higher, because the product of A into V must be constant, right? The product of A into V must be what? Constant, which means wherever the cross section area is lesser, the speed of that jet will be what? Higher. Similarly, wherever this area is more, there the speed of the jet will be what? Less. Okay, so the outcome is what? The velocity of the liquid will be slower where the area of cross section is larger. and the velocity of the liquid will be faster where the area of cross section is small. Like any question on the equation of continuity, right? It will be straight based upon this. A1 V1 is equal to what? A2 V2. So here this formula is for what? This is for the ideal fluid. Otherwise, you know, we will just have to add that rho also. So what is it? Rho A1 V1 is equal to what? Rho 2 A2 V2. Now the other theorem or the derivation that we have for the ideal fluids is the conservation of energy principle. So for that we look at what are the energy terms that will be involved. Because it is a fluid, you take a tube or anything, the fluid is flowing means what? It will have kinetic energy, right? So if m is the mass of the fluid, v is the speed, then it will have a kinetic energy which is equal to what? Half mv square. If you calculate what is the kinetic energy per unit volume, means half mv square by v we have to do. So here this is what? This is not small v, this is capital V, that is representing volume. Small v is representing what? Speed. Mass by volume is what? Density, right? So kinetic energy per unit volume is what? Half rho v square. Similarly, if the liquid mass that we are considering is at a height h above the reference, it will have a potential energy of mgh. The potential energy per unit volume will be what? Mgh by v. Mass by volume is what? Density rho. So it will be what? Rho gh. And we also have one more energy term that is called as the pressure energy. So pressure energy, if you consider a liquid of volume V, the pressure energy is what? P into V. This is something that we will get, I mean, in thermodynamics also we will get this. In chemistry also you will be talking about it. The pressure energy will be what? P into V. Pressure multiplied by the volume. So you look at it, what is the pressure unit? Pascal, which is Newton per meter square. Volume is what? Meter cube. Look at this, what is it in terms of? It will be in terms of joules. If you look at what is the pressure energy per unit volume, means again we are divided by volume, that is going to give us pressure. Now the Bernoulli's theorem, we are not going to do the derivation of it here, is a theorem that talks about the conservation of energy in a ideal fluid case which is flowing in a streamlined manner. It's when the ideal fluid which is flowing in a streamlined manner. Because the turbulent flow means there can be some energy losses, energy dissipation will happen. The total energy, which is the pressure energy part, kinetic energy part, and the potential energy part, the total energy per unit volume at any point in the liquid you take, it is going to be same. You mark any point, let's say we mark a point 1, we mark a point 2. At point 1, what is it? Pressure energy per unit volume is P1. Then the kinetic energy is what? Half rho, if you take the density is rho 1, right, it will be what? Half rho 1 V1 square plus rho 1 G into H1. That is the total energy, pressure energy part, kinetic energy part, potential energy part. That will be equal to the energy. So here what is it? Pressure P2 plus rho 2 into G into H2. H is the height above the reference, plus half rho 2 into V2 square. If you consider ideal means what? Rho will be same everywhere. If the liquid is ideal means what? Rho will be same. So rho 1, rho 2 will not come. We will just get what? Simply rho will come. Both the places the density will be what? Same. So the pressure energy per unit volume plus the kinetic energy per unit volume and the potential energy per unit volume, the total value of this rate at any point you take inside the liquid flow will be same. This is what we call as the Bernoulli's principle or Bernoulli's theorem, which is nothing but a conservation of energy approach. Now this has got some interesting applications. Like if you look at it, right, the carburetor or a paint gun, scent sprayer, atomizer, insect sprayer, all of them they work on the Bernoulli's theorem. Like these can be some theoretical questions that can be asked. So what is this typical atomizer? Look at it. You will have a liquid in a container and there will be a rubber balloon that will be fixed on top. The rubber balloon will blow the air at high speed, means between this point and this point, right, we apply the Bernoulli's theorem. If you apply the Bernoulli's theorem, what will happen? Here the speed is high. Here the speed is what? High. So whenever the speed is high, look at the Bernoulli's theorem concept. What is it? P plus half rho v square plus rho gh. This entire term must be constant. Wherever this speed is high, because we are blowing the air fast, at that location the pressure will be what? Reduced, because the total some value should be what? Constant. That should remain constant. So the moment we blow the air from the rubber balloon fast, the pressure here at this point, right, will get reduced. As the pressure is reduced there, at the bottom here pressure is P1. This will push the liquid into it, and once the liquid goes to the top, right, since there is an air that is blowing, it will just simply push the liquid out and the liquid will come out like a spray. So this is the typical working of all of them: paint gun, scent sprayer, carburetor, atomizer, insert sprayer. All of them, they work on the same principle. Now you see that sometimes when there are cyclones, etc., even some windstorms, the houses or the places which have got asbestos roofing, right, the rooftop will just go away. I'm sure you might sometimes the house itself might go away. That is a different thing. Like you can see in the visualization, right, what is happening? There is a windstorm that is happening, and after some time what has happened? The house that is constructed, fully it has gone off. So why does it occur? Look at it. Inside the house we have a normal pressure, that is atmospheric pressure. Outside, because of cyclone or whatever it is, the pressure is what? The wind is blowing. Outside the wind is blowing at a very high speed. We take a point on the surface and inside. There is not much height difference between them. Height difference is not there, which means what? The inside P1 plus half rho V1 square. Because the height difference is not there, the rho gh term will get cancelled. Is equal to what? P2, this is the outside. P2 plus half rho V2 square. Inside it's like almost there is no movement of the air, etc. So this is like 0. Now V2 is high because the cyclone is blowing. The speed here is what? High. As a result, P2 will get reduced. So P2 value will become less than P1. Means inside the house the pressure is more, outside the house pressure is less. That is the reason why the rooftop gets off from the house. Sometimes it depends on the way the house are designed. Like in this case, the house fully is designed like 180T. Like probably in India we don't get to see these kind of houses much, but in some foreign countries, right, you will see these kind of houses being set up. In fact, if you're interested, you can even see, like, probably they even move the entire house from one place to other place. The way these houses are actually constructed. Okay, so this is about the blowing off of the roof during the storms. Now even the design of the aeroplane wings will be done in such a way that it will be able to create the dynamic lift. So the design will be in such a way that the wind speed at the top of the air wing will be high. Top of the air wing and below the air wing, right, there is not much height distance. So again we will use same concept. P1 plus half rho V1 square should be equal to what? P2 plus half rho V2 square. V1 is higher means what? The corresponding P1 should be less. So P1 is less means what? Above the wing the pressure is less, below the wing pressure is what? High. So that's what is achieved by the design. So the design of the aeroplane wing is made in such a way that the curvature, right, will provide what? The wind speed will be higher. The curvature will give it in such a way that the wind speed above the air wing will be higher than below. As a result of it, what is going to happen? The pressure above will be less, and that is what is going to provide the dynamic lift. Like so when an aeroplane is taking off, the dynamic lift is created by what? The applications of the Bernoulli's theorem. Even we have this Magnus effect, like a spinning ball, right? Normal ball which is in translation motion, the wind speed above is equal to wind speed below. That's not going to create anything. But if the ball is spinning or rotating, then what we see is that the wind speed, let's call it as V1, and wind speed is V2. V1 will be more. V1 is more means what? The pressure there, again we will assume that there is no height difference between them, which means what? P1 plus half rho V1 square is equal to what? P2 plus half rho V2 square. So V1 is higher means what? P1 is lesser. Again we'll have what? Dynamic lift. So Magnus effect is what? When a ball which is rotating or spinning, it will have an upward lift. That's what we call as the Magnus effect. If the ball is not spinning, then we will not have this upward lift that is acting. So all these are the applications of the Bernoulli's principle or Bernoulli's theorem. Now we also have one more useful device that's called as venturimeter. So venturimeter is used to measure the volume flow rate in a liquid. So venturimeter is used to measure the volume flow rate in a liquid. Okay, so this is something that if you have a you have a flow pipe, we'll create two insertion areas. One will be a larger cross section, typically that's what we call as the inlet, and other will be a narrow cross section, that's what we call as a throat. Okay, so how does this work? It works on the principle of the Bernoulli's theorem. What is it? We mark point 1 and point 2. So here the final formula, the way we will remember it is 2 will refer to what? Throat, narrow cross section. 1 will refer to what? Larger cross section. You see cross section 1 and cross section 2, right? First thing what we will do is the equation of continuity. A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. Second thing is, if you take the point here and point here at the same level, right? Rho gh part will not come. Bernoulli's equation. P1 plus half rho V1 square is equal to what? P2 here, pressure here is P2. Pressure here is what? P1. So P1 plus half rho V1 square is equal to what? P2 plus half rho V2 square. And through the insertion, right, we will connect a manometer. Inside the manometer, we will have a mercury and the difference between the two pressures P1 and P2, right, will be given by the difference in the level of the mercury column. Like in a manometer, right, the difference between the pressure is given by what? Difference in the level of the mercury column. So let's say the difference in the level of the mercury column on both sides is H. Then the pressure difference between P1 and P2, right, what is it? P1 minus P2 will be equal to what? Density of the mercury into G into H. Here H is what? The height difference between the two sides. The manometer, two sides, we have the mercury column, right? The height difference between the two sides. Now using these three equations, right, we will be able to find out what is the flow rate. Flow rate means what? Either A1 V1 or A2 V2, because equation of continuity says that flow rate in the tube must be what? Everywhere constant. So flow rate value, this is the final formula, we can remember. What is it? A1 A2 into root of 2 rho m GH by rho into A1 square minus A2 square. So here A1 is what? Larger area, inlet. A2 is what? Throat or narrow. Rho m is what? Density of the mercury. Rho is the density of the liquid. H is the height difference between the two sides of the mercury column. So this is about the working of the venturimeter, which is based upon the Bernoulli's principle. We have one more calculation which will give us the speed of efflux. That's what we call as the Torricelli theorem. If you have a large vessel, so what is the assumption here? We have a large vessel which is open to atmosphere, and there is a small opening that is also open to atmosphere. Both are open to atmosphere. Now if you apply, let's say we take point 1 and point 2 like that, we apply the Bernoulli's theorem here. What we are going to get is the speed with which the liquid will be coming out of the small opening. That is what we will be referring as what? The speed of efflux, or also called as what? Velocity of efflux. How this comes is, what is the Bernoulli's equation? here the pressure P1 plus the height, we will take this as a reference. Height above the reference is what? H. So rho GH plus half rho V1 square is equal to P2 plus, that is the reference, means that height is 0, plus half rho V2 square. Here P1 is equal to P2 because both are open to atmosphere, right? Then means what? We have rho GH plus half rho V1 square is equal to half rho V2 square. Rho we can cancel it off. Multiply by 2. 2GH is equal to what? So 2GH plus V1 square is equal to V2 square. Now, equation of continuity if you apply equation of continuity, right? Here if this is area of cross section is A1, this area of cross section which will be very, very small, A2. Then what we'll have? A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2, which means look at this V1 value is what? A2 by A1 into V2. A1 is very large. It's a large vessel or a container. So which means if you are doing A2 by A1 means this is a very small fraction. So V1 value will be almost negligible in comparison to V2. So if you neglect it, right, what we will get? V2 square is equal to 2GH. From here V2 will be equal to what? Root 2GH. This is like the speed of a particle which is dropped from a height h. In mechanics we will see that, right? So this speed is what we will be calling as the velocity of efflux. So if you create an orifice or opening at a point which is a level h below the top surface, right? So what is the speed with which it will be coming out? What is it? Root 2GH, where h is what? The depth of the orifice below the top surface or the open surface of the liquid. If we create the orifice at the bottom, then what is the velocity of efflux? The velocity of efflux will be what? It will be root 2G capital H. That is the overall height of the liquid column, overall height of the vessel. Even using that velocity we can find what is the range or the distance that the water can actually cover. That is something that we have seen in the kinematics 2D motion, right? That is like a horizontal projectile type. Now if we create the orifice or opening at the bottom, so we have a vessel where the liquid is filled up to a height capital H, we have a hole at the bottom, okay, then the time it takes for the entire water to go out of the tank, this is something that we can get by using the integration approach, because the speed, right, will keep changing. Why? Because it depends upon the height of the level, right? As the liquid is going out means the height will keep changing, so speed also will change. The overall time it takes for the emptying of the tank is what? A by A naught into root 2H by G. What is it? A by A naught into root 2H by G. In this, right, what is A? A is the area of the container, which means what? The top surface. That is the A. A naught is the area of the orifice. A naught is what? The area of the orifice. So this is about the time it takes for the emptying of the tank. Now one of the other interesting things is if you open a tap, normally when the water is falling from the tap, right, you will see something very interesting. The water, if you think of it like a funnel, right, the water funnel gets narrower. As it keeps going down, it gets narrower. The falling stream of water becomes narrower. Why? Because if you apply the Bernoulli's equation, right, look at this P, if you assume both the places pressure is same, plus rho GH plus half rho V1 square. This we take as a reference, the bottom point. Reference point means that is the reference, right? So rho GH will not be there. Here we will have only half rho V2 square. As per the Bernoulli equation, what you are saying? Rho GH plus half rho V1 square is equal to what? Half rho V2 square. Which means V2 value is what? Higher than V1 definitely. So as it going down, the velocity keeps on increasing. The more, the more and more height it falls through, the velocity will be increasing by that much value. Which means if you apply the equation of continuity on top of it, think of it, what you will get? Here the area is there. Here we'll have an area. Let's say the area is A1 and here is the area A2. What is the equation of continuity? A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2, right? Now only we said V2 value is higher, means the corresponding A2 value will be what? Lesser. So as the water is falling down, right, the beam gets narrower because the speed is increasing, right? The velocity is increasing. As the velocity is increasing, the area of cross section must decrease, right? Equation of continuity. Okay, so all these are the practical things that we see, where the Bernoulli's equation and then the equation of continuity will actually get applied. Now the thing that we need to keep in mind is that these two, both the equation of continuity and the Bernoulli's theorem, both are for what? They are for the ideal fluids. Okay. So how does the viscous liquid or the real liquids will behave? So we can understand the behavior by looking at the velocity profile. So when we say velocity profile, let's say we have a tube which is carrying the liquid. If you see the velocity, I mean these markings indicate let's say the velocity magnitude like that. In case of the non-viscous liquid or the ideal liquid that you talked about, across different layers, like you see different layers, right? Across all of them the velocity will be same. Viscous means the layers in contact with the external surface, the layers that are in contact with the external surface, there the velocity is what? 0. As you go away from that contact surface, the velocity profile increases. Like you see cylindrical tube means center line is where we will have the maximum velocity. Instead, if you have a surface, means let's say we have a surface on which the liquid is flowing, the free surface layer or the top layer, that is what will be having the maximum, like we can represent it like this, that's what will be having the maximum. So the bottommost which is in contact with the below surface, that will be at a 0 velocity. This even we can see practically, like if you step into water which is flowing right below your feet, you will not feel much impact, but the topmost layer at your knees or whatever the place the topmost layer is going, you can feel the impact is what? Very strong. Now what is the reason for this kind of a velocity profile? It is what we call as the viscous force or viscosity. So how do we understand this? Let us say we have the contact surface, this is the external surface, and we are saying on top of it the liquid is flowing. The liquid layers are actually flowing on top of it. So when they flow, as we said, right, every layer will oppose the relative motion. Like if the motion is towards the right side, it will oppose the relative motion, the layer to layer relative motion. So that bottommost layer, right, this is at rest, it will try to stop the one above it, that will try to stop the one above it, like that. So as a result, what we will get is this kind of an velocity profile distribution. The bottommost layer is at rest. So we can say the viscosity is more like what? It's like the internal frictional force between the layers of the liquid. Okay, but this is generally we can use the frictional force word, but we cannot say that viscosity and friction are same, because after some time we will see that there are some, like very fundamental differences between a viscous force and a frictional force. We will talk about them, but this is how the viscosity will actually operate when it comes to the liquid flow. So how do we measure this force? So we will be able to measure it by using the Newton's law of viscosity. So for that what we do is we take again same, there is a contact surface, on top of it there are these layers of the liquid which are in motion. As we said, there will be what? The velocity profile distribution. So this is the free surface. From free surface, if you go perpendicular to the layer, if you have a displacement dx and the corresponding change in velocity is dv, generally what is the thing? This dv is going to be negative. Why? Because from top layer, if you are moving through, means when you move into the liquid, the velocity will be what? Decreasing, right? So dv is going to be negative. So the thing about the frictional force, in this case this is what we are calling as viscosity, is it will be proportional to the dV by dx value. Means, in case where the frictional force means, we're talking about the viscous force. In case where the viscous force is higher or stronger, you will see that the change in velocity per unit displacement will be having greater value. So which means, this is what we will be also calling it as the velocity gradient. So what is the other name for this? Velocity gradient. So wherever we see the velocity gradient higher, it is possible because of the larger value of the viscous forces. Okay, so for now we can use this friction and viscous interchangeably because we have not still come to the discussion of differences between them. Okay, so once we talk about the differences between them, right, then we will be clear that okay, this is more like a friction, but there are some differences in the way the friction behaves and the viscous forces behaves. Now the other thing is this frictional force, right, will be directly proportional to the layer area. If the layer area is A, the viscous force will be directly proportional to that. This is where it is fundamentally different from the friction, because friction does not depend upon the contact area. Like if you have an object which is on a surface, this contact area, right, that will not come into account when we are calculating the frictional force. But here, what is the thing? Viscous force is directly proportional to the area of contact between the layers. By merging both of them, what we can say, the viscous force is proportional to A into dV by dx. But we'll put a negative. Why? Because already we know dV is going to be negative, right? That's why to make it overall positive, we'll put a negative there. So we can make this into equation. This is what is the Newton's law for the viscosity. What is it? The viscous force is equal to minus eta is the constant. A dV by dx. This dV by dx is what? The velocity gradient. Change in velocity divided by the distance moved perpendicular to the layers. Okay. Now here one of the obvious questions is what will be the units of eta and what will be the dimensional formula. The CGS unit of eta is what? Dyne into second per centimeter square. That can be also called as a poise. What is the SI unit? Newton second per meter square, which can be also expressed as what? Pascal into second. The conversion is the SI unit value, which is 1 Newton second per meter square, is equal to what? 10 poise. We can even calculate what is the dimensional formula. Check it how we can calculate the dimensional formula. We have only one equation, right, where it is coming. So from that equation we can calculate the dimensional formula. Check how we can do it. So if we look at this equation, means see the viscous force. What is the force? Left hand side ml t power minus 2 is equal to right hand side, what is there? Minus will not come in the dimensional formula calculation. Eta dimensional formula, area is what? L square. dV means change in velocity, that is L t power minus 1. Divided by dx means what? The displacement, that is L. L gets cancelled. So what is it? ml t power minus 2 by L square t power minus 1. That is the dimensional formula for eta. So what is it? T power minus 1. So m L power minus 1 t power minus 1. This is the dimensional formula for the eta. Now the temperature plays an important role in the viscosity. The liquids, right, will behave differently from the gases. So in case of liquids, what happens is the viscous force, right, is because of the cohesive forces operating between the particles of the liquid. Cohesive forces means the forces that exist between particles of same type. If you increase temperature, what happens is these particles relative separation is going to slightly increase. So the cohesive force between them means between the particles will be what? Decreasing. As a result, the viscosity also will decrease. When the cohesive forces are stronger, viscosity will be strong. Cohesive forces are weaker means what? Viscosity will be weak. So this is when we say viscosity decreases means here we are talking about eta. Other things are remaining same. So for liquids, right, increase in temperature, eta will decrease. Whereas when it comes to the gases, let's say we have an object which is put into gas. The viscosity is because of the collisions of the gas particles. The collisions of the gas particles, they will offer resistance to the movement of another object in the gases. So with increasing temperature, what happens? We will see in the kinetic theory of gas chapter also. The number of collisions will increase. Technically, we will represent this by a term called as collision frequency. But yeah, so the number of collisions increases means what? the viscosity also will be increasing, means eta will increase. There is the difference between how temperature will have a role to play in case of the liquids and gases. Now we said, right, the viscous force and frictional force, though we have been saying friction in case of fluids, that is a common way of referring to the viscous forces, but there are some fundamental differences. Look at what are those. The viscous force directly proportional to the area. We said, right, in the formula itself we are having, what is it, minus eta A dV by dx. But friction is not like that, right? If you take kinetic friction, let's say there is an object which is moving on the surface. What is the kinetic friction value? Mu k into normal reaction, right? Here the area does not come. Look at the third point. Friction is directly proportional to normal reaction. But viscous force is independent of normal reaction. Look at the Newton's formula. In that the normal reaction does not come. The friction will be independent of the velocity of the object. Like, whether the object is moving with a 3 meter per second or 10 meter per second, always the kinetic friction value will be same. But the viscous force, it depends upon what? The relative velocity between the layers. Because what is this? The dV represents, what is this dV by dx? This is what? This dV by dx, right, is what? It is a measure of the relative velocity between different layers. This is what we call as velocity gradient. So the friction totally does not depend upon the velocity. But the viscous forces depend upon what? They depend upon the velocity gradient or the relative velocity between the layers. These are the differences between viscous force and the friction. Okay. Now this is exclusively for the JEE advanced part, the Poiseuille equation, right? This is the treatment of the flow of water or liquid through a pipe similar to the current. So here what we are going to see, the treatment of the flow of water through a pipe just like the current. The flow rate, as per the Poiseuille equation, flow rate, if you take a cylindrical pipe with a circular radius of cross section R, which is having a pressure difference delta P between the two ends, length is L, and eta is the quotient of viscosity of the liquid that is flowing. The flow rate formula as per the Poiseuille's equation, right, is what? Pi delta P into R power 4 by 8 eta L. This we can treat similar to the current. Remember what is the current? If you apply a potential difference delta V, this divided by the resistance, that will give us what? Current. So we can, if here what is the driving force? The pressure change, right, or the pressure difference. So we can write it like what? The volume flow rate is equal to delta P by RF. This is the equivalent of the resistance. What is this RF? The resistance offered by the pipe for the flow of the liquid. So how do we get the RF? Just compare these two, right? If you try to compare it, from here how we can write it? Just keep the delta P in the numerator. Denominator will be changing as what? 8 eta L by pi R power 4. That is what is our Q. So it's like what? Delta P by R type, right? Resistance type. So what is the value of this resistance? 8 eta L by pi R power 4. Now with this we can talk about the pipes in series. Like you have two pipes in series. Radius R1, length L1. Radius R2, length L2. They are in series. Series means in case of the resistances, right? What is the overall resistance? R1 plus R2, right? Same here also. Overall resistance is what? R1 plus R2. 8 eta L1 by pi R1 power 4 plus 8 eta L2 by pi R2 power 4. The flow rate will be what? Overall pressure difference P1 minus P2. So from this end to that end, divided by the R equivalent. Similarly, if you have parallel, what is the concept in case of electrical resistances in parallel? R equivalent is given by what? 1 by R equivalent is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. Again from here the overall Q will be what? The pressure difference delta P by R equivalent. So these kind of things can be asked particularly in the JEE mains level. Okay, so the Poiseuille equation and the applications of the current model, that's what we call it as current model for the flow of, in fact the current model, right, we will use it here as well as in the heat transfer. Conduction also we will talk about this current model. Okay, so there in the heat transfer also we will talk about How do we treat the flow of heat? Similar to the flow of current. Now, Newton's law gives an expression for the viscous force. We have one more law, that is the Stokes law. Like if you have a spherical object of radius r, which is present or which is moving in a large volume of liquid of coefficient of viscosity eta. This spherical object is moving with a velocity v. Then the viscous force experienced by the spherical object is given by what? 6 pi eta rv. This is particularly for the spherical object. Obviously the viscous force, if the object is moving down, means what? Viscous force will be up. Now, one of the applications of the Stokes law is to find out what is the value of terminal velocity. Terminal velocity is basically if you have a spherical object which is falling through a large amount of fluid. Falling through means, so falling under the influence of gravity. So usually if you release an object from a height h, means what we will say, it will finally achieve a velocity of root 2gh. That is the formula we will have from kinematics. If you drop an object from a height h, means the final velocity will be what? Root 2gh. But when you look at raindrops which are falling through height, the raindrops will not be falling as per this velocity formula, because of the viscous force offered by the air molecules, right? The raindrops will be falling with a velocity which we are going to call as a terminal velocity, which will be a constant value. As per this formula root 2gh, right, what do you see? As the raindrops are falling through more and more height, they should come and hit the ground with a higher speed, but that is not going to happen. Before falling to the surface of the earth, they would have reached the terminal velocity concept. How the terminal velocity comes, we will see. So as I look at this now, this is like a spherical object which is moving through a liquid. So outside what is there? There is a liquid or a fluid is there. What will be the force acting on this? The weight downwards. We will take the volume of this is what? V. Volume of this is what? V. So volume will be what? 4 by 3 pi r cube. That is the volume. There will be buoyancy force acting because there is a liquid that is displaced. Buoyancy will be what? Weight of the liquid displaced, that will be upwards, upward thrust. So what is it? V into rho. Rho is generally the symbol used for what? The density of the liquid outside. That is the buoyancy formula. Then previously we saw Stokes law, right? The viscous force is what? 6 pi eta rv. What will be the viscous force acting? 6 pi eta rv. So eta is the quotient of viscosity of the liquid, r is the radius of the sphere, and v is the velocity with which it will be moving at that point of time. What happens is, it is falling through gravity, means what? Mg will be higher than the buoyancy. That's why it is falling down. But as it is gaining more and more velocity, look at what is going to happen. The viscous force value is going to increase. We will reach a stage where the total upward forces will balance the total downward force. From that point onwards, the spherical body will have zero acceleration. Means what? Whatever the speed there will be maintained. So the condition there is what? The total upward force will be equal to downward force. Upward force means what? The viscous force as per the Stokes law formula, 6 pi eta r v, we are putting v subscript t, that is the terminal velocity. That is the velocity which is going to remain constant from henceforth, plus the buoyancy v rho g is equal to mg, means m can be written as what? V into sigma. Sigma is what in this? Sigma is the density of the material of that object. Rho is the density of the liquid. Okay. So here if you just substitute the value of V, right? What is the value of V? 4 by 3 pi r cube. Substitute that and rearrange it, means we are going to get what? We will get the value of the terminal velocity. So look at this now. What is it? Just keep 6 pi eta r v here. Take everything to the other side. What is it? 4 by 3 pi r cube into g into what is there? Sigma minus rho. Now accept v terminal, bring everything to the other side, right side. What is the formula we will have? 2 by 9 r square, because you see here 1 r gets cancelled. 2 by 9 r square into sigma minus rho divided by eta into g. So we do get sometimes theoretical questions asking about what are the factors on which terminal velocity will depend upon. You can see here, terminal velocity will depend upon what? Densities of both the things. Density of the spherical object as well as the density of the liquid. It depends upon the coefficient of viscosity, eta. It depends upon the radius of the spherical object. And also depends upon the g, acceleration due to gravity value. Okay, so this is how we will calculate the terminal velocity. And terminal velocity, as I mentioned, right, what are the applications of this? In the raindrops, if you want to calculate what is the speed with which the raindrops will fall, you have to find out what is the terminal velocity. Not only that, to find the charge on the electrons, right, Millikan's oil drop experiment, this is something that you will study in atomic structure +1 chemistry, as well as we'll have a chapter in +2 physics atoms. There also we'll talk about this Millikan experiment. In that experiment, right, he will use the same concept of terminal velocity. Okay. Also, when we are using parachute, terminal velocity calculations are done to estimate the safety levels, because when a person is falling through using parachute, right, he would be attaining the terminal velocity. Okay, unless there is an deceleration or there is an negative acceleration, he would usually come down with what? Terminal velocity. So while we look at design of the parachute, we'll have to consider these terminal velocity calculations. So this is about the terminal velocity and its application. Now with this we have completed the fluid statics part and fluid dynamics part. In a separate video, we'll look at the micro properties of the fluids, which is mostly about the surface tension aspect. Okay, so we'll see in the next video.